Thanks, Carlota. Yeah, so I'm very happy to co-organizing this event with the dena. I think we are privileged in Germany to have the dena compared to many other countries that don't have such an agency. We have the privilege of being able to connect with like-minded people, having a space here in Berlin, always there for us. So we should leverage this opportunity, and I can encourage to also engage. I've been engaging since some of these workshops that were highlighted there, mentoring program, and received tons of support so far. So thanks for that as a first. And then to the topic of the night. I'm not gonna give an intro about myself. Carlota already said it. Happy to connect on LinkedIn. I'm a very open-minded person. So if you want to also talk to me later, we can get to know each other. And I want to really dig deeper into the topic of flexibility, which is a topic that I'm passionate about as well since a long time. As you know, and here I don't have to explain why flexibility is a key word in the energy system, but still, as a reminder, we need to we are in this deep transition phase where we traditionally didn't have to handle production flexibility as much as we do now, as we have volatile renewables that we cannot control so much, at least, as in the past. We need to rethink demand and batteries, in particular, as flexibility sources. So the demand needs to be adjusted to the production time, as well as to congested grids. So that's always one thing to remember, and I think also here we can educate the rest of society if we always give this analogy, which I think is very helpful. The water being the pipes, that's the grids, they can transport a limited amount of electricity at every time, and this highly depends from the production and the demand, which is the renewables capacity and highly weather dependent as well as demand dependent. Now these are the levers, this is the conditions and the constraints. And today is all about flexibility, but before we dive deeper into flexibility, there's a few interesting macro trends that I wanted to deep dive. On the one hand is this flexibility, and in my view is not highlighted enough, highly is now coming across two crucial trends in the world, and one is software and one is AI. So traditionally in the energy engineers didn't have to be experts in software. Now, more than ever, I think everybody here, especially in Germany, we need to up our game in terms of software know-how and AI know-how, because all of this flexibility requires data handling and requires software interoperability and demand forecasting, as well as flexibility forecasting, which is inherent in analytics algorithms, and AI is very much and not LLMs, but deep learning is very much a great tool for that if we have the data required. Hopefully in Germany faster than we're currently doing at this space. So that's just in terms of macro trends. Recently, I don't know who of you knows the DNV. So DNV is this Norwegian big organization, a bit like Fraunhofer, if you want to give it an analogy. They recently released a report that is quite interesting about the energy outlook, and they tried to be conservative in the sense that they didn't want to do the forecast on how we get to 2045 and get zero emissions in 2045, but being a bit more conservative, more realistic, because let's face it, it's not looking as bright as it could. And a few highlights I wanted to share with you from this report was that I found interesting. On the one hand is they said, realistically speaking, we can get to 90% emissions reduction by 2045, which, I mean, if it's not 100%, 90% doesn't seem so bad either. So even the realistic scenario seems quite good. Of course, it's not going to be without effort, but that's another story. Also, another good news that I found interesting is, according to them, last year, global emissions peaked. So we are already... We could do better, but it's also good to see on achievements, and that's on a global scale. For those that know me, I'm very much passionate also about China and what's happening over there. And I think as an energy enthusiasts like we are, China and Germany are maybe among the most interesting countries. Germany for the pace of the third world economy of changing towards renewables and taking the lead. But China is equally taking the lead for the implementation in their country, but also especially in the production of materials like EVs, batteries, and PV. And for maybe you didn't know, but 2020 they set themselves a quite ambitious goal of installing 1,200 gigawatts of solar and I think wind as well. Was it? Yeah, solar and wind capacity by 2030. And 1,200 gigawatts for, maybe, I don't know if you know the numbers a little bit, but in Germany we want to have 250, I think, overall as a kind of a key target to get to zero emission. So 1,200, and they set themselves 2020 to 2030. They achieved the goal 6 years early, so actually last year, and so it's mind-boggling to just think about that, and the growth is just exponential. I mean, if you look at also the production capacity of PV is insane, but it's not only PV, it's also EVs. They already have about half, I think more than half of the world's sales, new vehicle sales that they can produce in Chinese factories alone already. And then in terms of batteries, there's like a global demand of 2 terawatt hours, was it? Yeah, 2 terawatt hours. That is currently the world's demand. And there's already 8 terawatt hours of global production capacity. And of that, China covers 6 terawatt hours already. So this, maybe you have seen a bit, the battery price plunges and the 300 gigawatt applications here in Germany alone. So this gives a bit an order of magnitude. Not everything will be installed, but it's just prices have been like decreasing 50% year over year. And we are seeing just a price curve that will be decreasing much more. Bless you. Okay, there's also bad things. US, Trump, that I think we are all probably not so happy about. The good thing, if you want to look at the bright side, I think the states in the US have quite a lot of power, and so states like California still maintaining their trajectory in the good way, and even the most libertarian state like Texas is incredibly installing wind power and other renewables at record pace. It's an interesting use case to really look at, given their speed of adoption. Their especially grid approvals, which, as you probably know, is one of the key hurdles for us to succeed in the energy transition, is how we manage the grids, and this antiquated way of approving grid access. So they are kind of doing like in a very much chaotic approval way, so that everybody can just connect to the grid. So it's very interesting use case to me, and the Texas for me proves that even the most haters of the renewables can see in their libertarian paradise that even them, they are actually super much the fans of the energy transition. So they should just adopt any libertarian person and hater of renewables should look at Texas as well. Right. Then just a few more specifics about Germany that I found interesting is now we have 19 of electricity of the share of energy is coming from electricity. This is set to increase more than double, so 46% due to EVs, due to other heat demands, things we will dive deeper into how we manage this tremendous increase in actually share of electricity in the share of demand. And we will get a lot of batteries, even though the 300 gigawatt that we have this year that applied for being connected is probably not going to happen, but still we will have 337 gigawatts of batteries in 2050, which amounts to a capacity of 1,560 gigawatt hours. So this, just to give an order of magnitude for those that are not so familiar with the German situation, we have like now about 80 gigawatt of demand peak and 2 terawatt hours of daily demand. Okay, given the increase, it will be a bit more, but still, it's an interesting figure to keep in mind. They were also including EV batteries, by the way. to some extent in that figure, but mostly stationary batteries. And the tremendous expense of grid fees that's also marked piqued my interest. We discussed it earlier here in the podcast that I recorded with Michael. The grid fees being not necessarily having to be that high, but we're talking 3.3 trillions. So Billionen in German, for those that have following the news lately. So we're talking 1.5 trillion in new debt that's doubling the German governmental debt. It's 3.3 trillion. It's like, a lot of costs coming up to. So flexibility is also key to reduce the grid fees and the grid expenditures that are being planned there. One very bright thing I found about vehicles is in 2050, and just also imagine that, they predicted only 3% of the absolute numbers of vehicles would be internal combustion engines. So just something that I never realized as well in my mind. In 2050, we only have 3%. So that's an interesting flip side, as we're now at less than 3% EVs in the absolute numbers. So in such a short time, we will actually flip it around. And maybe a few thoughts. I was at the DNV event. Siemens CEO was there, Siemens Energy CEO, and they were kind of bullish about the gas plants for capacity mechanisms. I think they have a role to play, but do we really need that many new expensive gas plants being there, or can we use EVs and other flexibility sources? Just opening up a few questions for debate later on, as well as obviously the nuclear debate that now the current chancellor seems quite bullish about. And are they actually flexible in the ramp up and ramp down? One thing I learned, interestingly, apparently French nuclear reactors are much more flexible than German nuclear reactors were. Something I didn't fact check, but it seemed quite interesting, at least. Made me question if the knowledge of having the nuclear reactors being very inflexible, if that's actually so true always. And role and ramp up of hydrogen, what role will it be playing as we're seeing that hydrogen actually not being adopted? And a few thoughts on the new government, the German government. I read the energy, the CDU's key pillars that they want to do. I don't know, I'm a bit skeptical. So it was again, the gas was number one, is their priority, making gas power plants. Second is pushing nuclear in different ways, fusion, pushing on fusion technology and etc. And reevaluating if we cannot turn them on again somehow. That still seems and then stopping EVs, the Verbrennerverbot, internal combustion ban in 2035. This was the third key priority, and the fourth priority we could say, okay, that's not too bad. It's a CO2 tax. Installing that, though I'm not sure how much it will have an influence in how they plan to make it social. It was a bit of a big debate, and the yellow vests in France showed as well what a high CO2 tax could mean. So final few thoughts. So I think we need to digitize faster in Germany with 2% smart meters. We were talking about it earlier. It just kills all the innovative business models that also incentivize. And then Smart Meter Light initiative, maybe that you have heard of with Octopus and Co. That's something I definitely agree should be done. Just get the measurements and then make as cheap as possible and agnostic control, as well as for the algorithms and for the learning, maybe let's, at the cost of data privacy, let's get more data flowing as we are already giving with our smartphones so much data away. I'm not sure if you're being pragmatic enough with the smart meters and if really that's such a critical personal information that it needs to be so secure. In terms of Green Deal, I'm quite optimistic about a few days ago, the Affordable Energy Action Plan that you might have seen that Ursula von der Leyen released has a lot of good elements in it. So also recommend looking into. They really want to focus on lowering power costs through removing grid fees and less electricity taxes, so across all the member states. So that's going to be an interesting development, as well as you might have heard of the clean energy package. So before working at RiDERgy, I was working for Energy, and the CEO of Energy was always claiming the clean energy package when it went through Parliament in 2019. That was almost back in the days with most of the regulatory changes were 1,000 pages. Each one is a business opportunity, and then member states had to have all these changes done by 2021. And we are 2025, and talking with some Stadtwerke, etc. Nowadays about dynamic tariffs is still like, I think we have it in the roadmap. I think we need to be faster, and at least that's on the top priority of the European Commission, to really have the member states doing some of these changes. So that's hopefully going to bring us something. Now, to the segue of the sessions that we're going to have now. So flexibility, there's, as I said, EVs. That's our part of the business model that RiDERgy focuses on. We're going to discuss this particular topic together. The format is going to be in different tables. I'm not sure if you wanted to share the details, Carlota, about the format in short. So then I'll give you the word for that in a second, as well as heat. And then we're glad to have Kelvin Energy here with us, that is going to dig deeper into the flexibility coming from heat sources, as well as then the control is a big aspect of it. And there again we have counterintuitively, so heat is Kelvin Energy, and the control and the overall control is called Heat, the company. So don't be confused. Hopefully Carlota is going to make it clear. So one personal encouragement for me for the overall event. So I believe much in so one thing that the Americans do good is always asking, how can I help you? And I think in Germany we are too much critical and reserved, and we should rather adopt a bit in such an especially environment, in a networking environment. Just ask the other person, think constructively, how can I help you, and be open of sharing. Because especially if you have a startup or a bright idea, startups die more from the lack of traction and having enough customers and making it happen than from oversharing. And I think 1 + 1 equals much more than 2. So just try to help each other out, be open in sharing, and hopefully you enjoy. Have a good evening. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Claudio. That already, I think, gave us a lot to talk about, and that's what we want to do now.